As Philippe announced in the beginning, we have a very old habit, tradition already, of closing our events with some wise words from Paul De Grauwe. So Paul, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kris. Yes, there is this tradition to ask me to formulate wise words over things I know very little about. So it's always very challenging, and most of the time I end up formulating questions. But this was certainly a very interesting meeting. I learned a lot. One of the things that I learned is that in fact, minority governments are more prevalent than one usually thinks, right? It's there in many countries. It has been there in many countries. And so this may lead to the following idea that maybe it has some features that could actually make it more attractive than majority governments. But I'll come back to that at the very end of my brief conclusion. So we asked interesting questions about legitimacy, democratic legitimacy of minority governments. And I tend to side with those who say, yes, it is legitimate, provided that for every bill introduced in Parliament, a majority can be found, because that's the cornerstone of a parliamentary democracy. It's a majority that has to be found. And if you can find different and shifting majorities for different issues, it doesn't seem to me that this creates a problem of legitimacy any more than, for example, a technocratic government, right? Sometimes it's also said technocratic governments are not legitimate, but if these technocratic governments, if we were to have governments populated by professors, and they would think out ingenious plans and present it to Parliament and find a majority, this surely would be legitimate, even though none of these technocrats, if I may call a professor a technocrat, actually has been elected himself or herself. But I would like to conclude by asking the following, or presenting the following idea to you, and that is that maybe there's not that much difference between minority and majority governments, and that there is something superior to minority governments compared to many majority governments in the fact that for each initiative you have to find a majority in Parliament. A minority government has to find an ad hoc majority in Parliament for every initiative. This makes the problem of finding majorities a very transparent procedure, right? You have to find a majority, for example, for a particular bill, say the budget, right? And you then have to find a majority of people in Parliament that will support that. And it becomes quite transparent in the way you find a majority. Contrast this to a majority government where, of course, internally there is as much infighting as there is between these different factions in Parliament. And as a result, within this coalition or within a party, in a one-party government, one has to find majorities for each and every initiative that is being taken. And I like to take the example of the United Kingdom in the last 4 years, right, where we have seen that governments, except for a very brief period, right, but now today, with Johnson having a large majority, what you do see is that there is incredible infighting into that party and that government, very intransparent, and as a result, frequent U-turns, right? And then my claim is that maybe or in certain circumstances, a minority government may have something attractive in that it makes this conflict that will always exist for every individual initiative you want to carry through Parliament, that you make that process more transparent than in some governments where all this is done within the cenacle of an individual party. And as a result, and this was also mentioned by Bonnie, you could actually have more coherence in minority governments than in some majority governments. And again, I think of the British government today, where incoherence and frequent U-turns have been the rule. This being said, let me conclude by saying that, yes, this was a very interesting meeting where at least I must admit I learned a lot, and I hope you did the same. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. Very wise indeed for things you know nothing about. Not bad at all. So thank you everybody. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bonnie, especially, and thank you, Lucien, for your contributions. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you all on November 12 at 12 o'clock for a new webinar of Re-Bel. Have a nice evening, everybody. Bye-bye.